Brutalism, a word that means cruelty and savageness. How such a word can define an architectural style used in so many buildings around the world? It is supposed to represent the brutal existence of life. During the post-war years in the 1950s, there was an urgent need of reconstruction, especially low-cost social housing on a large scale. So the architects at that time started to think on new ideas to construct massive buildings in a fast and effective way. But they didn't just think about the building itself. They explored a new idea of the city, a new architectural philosophy associated with the socialist utopian ideology. The shape of the buildings should emphasize functionality and the realities of modern life. And that includes emphasizing the modern circulation systems like the vertical accesses and new connections between buildings, separating pedestrian circulation from car traffic. It was an opportunity to rethink the cities and the way we live in the modern days. The principles came from the modernist movement, but it stands out because of the scale and the exposure of raw concrete. Actually, the term brutalism comes from the French expression béton brut, which means raw concrete. And the first time the term was used was by the British architects Allison and Peter Smithson in 1953. They described their projects for a house in Colville Place as a new brutalism. After that, in 1955, an architectural historian, Rainer Baham, recognized brutalism as a new movement. So what is exactly a brutalist building? It's not just a large composition of concrete blocks. It is more like an ethic, a commitment to express the truth of the building, exposing how it is built, its structure, and its functional system. For example, it is common in brutalist buildings seeing the external shapes associated with a specific interior space or function, or seeing the water and electric utilities exposed in the facade. And the construction system is also exposed by showing the bare building materials and the structural elements, so you can see the concrete unpainted with raw surfaces and the structural beams coming out, completely uncovered. Brutalist buildings have a modern design language, using the exposed structure and functional elements to create a composition of expressive geometric shapes. And those shapes used in large buildings create a dramatic effect and a powerful image. It may be kind of aggressive for a residential building, but for an institutional building, such as courts, city halls, universities, libraries, it creates a strong presence in the city and a desirable effect of power and monumentality. The Boston City Hall, built in 1968, is an example of that. Designed by Gerhard Kallman and Michael McKinnell, who co-founded the architectural studio Kallman, McKinnell and Knowles, this project was the winner of an international competition. The building creates a huge impact in the city, because it breaks with the conventional aesthetic and introduces a new design based on pure geometrical forms and an articulated structure that express the internal functions of the building. The upper levels, where the administrative offices are concentrated, are elevated by big vertical shapes, while the lower levels contains public activities, so it is connected to the exterior plaza. But while some people consider it as one of the greatest buildings of the modern days, an exceptional landmark of Boston, a magnificent example of brutalism style, others just look at it as the ugliest building on earth, completely unpleasant and dysfunctional. The truth is that, liking or not, it has a massive impact on everybody that passes by the building. Another controversial brutalist building is the Balfron Tower. This residential building is one of the most expressive brutalism examples of the United Kingdom. Designed by the architect Erno Goldfinger in 1965, the tower has 26 stories and 146 homes. The design is very simple and geometrical, and it's basically a junction of two large vertical blocks. A big block containing all the flats and a second block containing the stairs, lifts, and utility rooms for laundry and rubbish. And those two blocks are connected by 8 walkways. The shape of the building clearly shows its function, and its aesthetic is a result of the construction solution. These massive concrete blocks may create a kind of monumentality that works better in institutional than in residential buildings. Residential buildings should be able to make us feel at home, feel safe, and feel connected to our nature. Despite of being hated by many people, the Balfron Tower received a protection in 1996 to avoid its demolition. Well, it is definitely a great testimony of brutalist architecture that contributed to create new ways of solving housing needs in the modern city. And despite of the brutal concrete texture, it shows impressive shapes and contrasts. Another great contribution of the Brutalist movement was the use of modular systems as a new way of construction, which is something that many architects are experimenting nowadays, but it was already done in the 60s. A great example of that is the Habitat 67 in Canada. It is a residential complex that contains 354 identical and prefabricated concrete forms, arranged in various combinations. If we compare it to the Balfron Tower, it is kind of a deconstruction of the residential block to create diversity, individuality, and multi-level terraces to bring gardens into the building. In the 1970s, the Brutalism reached the Soviet Union, replacing the classic style used so far, and it became the Soviet modernism. The standardization and mass production of the residential buildings matched the communist ideology, but the massive and monumental buildings were also a symbol of totalitarian power. So what do you think about brutalism? Do you appreciate the minimalist approach with expressive geometrical shapes that changed the modern paradigm of architecture? Or do you approve the demolition of those buildings? Please leave your comment, share, and subscribe my channel for more videos about architecture and minimalism. Thanks for watching.